Looking for a place that does it all? Maldinis by the River serves mouth-watering breakfasts, pasta, pizzas and more, plus amazing coffee and cocktails. They hit the spot every single time. You're planning a special event? Well, their private function room and versatile restaurant are the perfect place for any celebration. Good food, good friends, good times, Maldinis. Welcome back to Life in 5, the podcast where we speak to some of the biggest names in sports, entertainment and the media. I'm MG and today's guest is a true giant of Australian television and a true giant in Australian folklore. He's just one of the best blokes you'll ever meet. A career spanning over 5 decades. In fact, it's close on 60 years he's been in this industry. He's interviewed presidents, prime ministers and everyday Aussies with the same respect and curiosity. From 60 Minutes to A Current Affair to his own show, he's helped define what journalism looks like in our country. It brings me great pleasure to introduce the one, the only, the 5 Gold Logies, Ramondo Ray Martin.
Hey, MG, thanks, mate.
Wow.
Honoured to be here, mate. Honoured to be here.
When I had my list of people to try and get for this chat, yours is on top of the list. Oh, yeah. I know, because you just, oh man, when I was doing a little bit of research, which I don't do much for this because it's all the guests' photos that kind of bring the content. But when I saw that you and Graham Kennedy had the same amount of Gold Logies, to be mentioned in the same breath as Graham Kennedy, I mean, and you just had another award named after you at the upcoming Logies. I mean, wow. Do you pinch yourself sometimes?
I do. No, I still do. I can't believe it. 60 years at the end of this year since I joined the ABC. I jumped the fence, was going to be a history teacher, and decided I wanted to be a journo, so I joined the circus. But I can't believe it's, there's nothing I would have sooner have done apart from, open the bowling for Australia maybe.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up all country New South Wales. My old man was a mechanic and he worked on, there was infrastructure for dams in New South Wales after the war, after WW2. And so we were itinerant. I lived in 13 different towns in New South Wales until I went to high school. I was the youngest of 4 kids. I had 3 older sisters. And I thought it was just boys' own adventure. I was always on a train, had mum and 3 sisters to look after me and dad. And so I just thought it was fantastic. My sisters, who were older, hated it because they were getting to teenage years and they'd have to go to a school and change uniform and be the same uniform from Gunnedah as they were in Tumut, etc. But I loved it. It was just fantastic. I couldn't believe how good it was. And
when you wanted to be a history teacher, when was the metamorphosis that went, I want to be in the media?
Yeah, no, my parents split when I was about 11 and I went with mum to Tassie and I played Aussie rules in Tassie.
How dare
I loved
you.
it. I know, I loved it. But then I came back to Sydney University to do history. And I won a scholarship, a Commonwealth scholarship and decided to do engineering for 2 weeks. And I got
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and I thought, Jesus, the wrong side of the brain for me. I can't handle this.
I feel like me with year 11. I lasted 2 weeks in year 11. I went, no.
Well, I felt that these kids were far too. I'd come from Tassie, and these kids were much too old and much too sophisticated, and they wore sort of leather pads on their jackets, and they pulled the good women. And I thought, no, they're out of my league. And so I jumped the fence and went across and did education. I was going to be a history teacher or lecturer, and I loved it. I still read history non-stop, but I thought, no, I'll join the circus. I had been.
Was there someone in particular who made you do it? Was there someone you saw and you went, I want to be like them, or?
No, I myself and a mate to get out of assemblies, we ran the school newspaper and also ran the radio station. I don't know whether that started it, but I just saw an ad once in the Sydney Morning Herald that said, if you like talking to people, if you like going to new places, how about this? And I thought, yep, that sounds like me.
Well, your first photo, Ray, is just a classic. I mean, this is iconic. George Negus, Ray Martin, Ian Leslie. This show, 60 Minutes, was massive. What year was this? And
that was 78. 78. So we started 79, but that photo was taken at the end of 78. I was based in New York for the ABC. I was sent there for 10 years as the ABC correspondent, and I'd seen the start of 60 Minutes, the American 60 Minutes, when I first arrived in 1968. And I thought, wow, this looked fantastic. The idea of going anywhere in the world, as long as there was a story. And then suddenly Kerry Packer bought it. And they rang me up and said, do you want to be one of the 3 reporters? I knew in passing George, I didn't know Ian at all, but I knew George and I thought, time to come home. And also, what a great idea. So it was kick-started everything, really.
So what you hear? You like mid to late 20s or early?
No, I'm about 34 there.
Okay.
Yeah, about 34. So I'd done 10 years in New York, and that again was a sort of dream time for me. I couldn't believe that I was in the belly of the beast. I saw the Nixon era and Watergate and the women's and gay and black revolution in America. So it was a hot time to be in America too.
When would you know, and who would give you your task, and how? Like, say someone who would come to you and say, "Ray, I want you to go to China to do this," and how often would you go overseas?
In 60 minutes?
For 60 minutes,
Oh,
yeah.
mate, those days only 3 reporters and 3 crews. We were away for 12 weeks at a time. I had no children. I'd been married for a long time at that stage. But so we'd go up to 12 weeks. It was usually the executive producer, Gerald Stone, who started 60 Minutes here, or else it was myself or my producer I work with all the time. We'd say, let's go to Alaska. What can we do in Alaska? Or, what can we do in China? What can we do in the Middle East and so on? So it was almost that. It was just, we do take a week for a story on the road, and we used to do it all on film, so you'd never seen what you'd done, and send it back to Sydney and hope it, fingers crossed.
Was there any reluctance at all to go to certain parts of the world?
Not really. I mean, when you're 34 and you've got, you're a kid really, and you've got, especially as a boy, as a bloke. No, it was. I never said no to anywhere. We went to some pretty dangerous spots. Some war
Any hairy
zones
moments?
Yeah, quite a few actually. I mean, you look at the Middle East now, and it's even worse than wars. I'd covered the Vietnam War and covered Afghanistan, but it's civil wars that are the worst because there's no front. You don't know where you are, and people don't know who you are, and they don't give a rat's if they've just got a Kalashnikov and a bandana on, and they just want to kill people. And so you've got to be fairly careful. That's the sort of thing, especially with a television camera. It's easier a newspaper journal. You've got a notepad, but you've got a camera that absolutely looks like a gun. So
you mentioned you knew George kind of, and you didn't know. Did you get how were you socially with these blokes? Did you have a beer with them? Was it a brotherhood, or you kind of didn't really know?
No. We as the years went on, I was there for six years until we had our daughter, and I decided not to travel. But we'd see each other quite often, although we were one direction and they were the other. George, I got on with especially well because he and my politics were much the same, and he was as keen on politics as me. Ian was a little more conservative, and so I didn't see so much of Ian. But it was still good camaraderie. You realise it was us against the world at that stage. The odds were, people didn't think this fancy new current affairs program on Channel 9 was ever going to work, and we had no idea of, the fact that if it fell over, Kerry would say, "See you later." And suddenly my 15 years in the ABC had gone. But it was just seemed like good fun. It was just, have a economy ticket in those days, economy ticket to anywhere in the world, and away you go.
So what's the biggest difference between 60 Minutes back then and 60 Minutes now? What do you think?
Oh, I think
the world's got smaller?
That was much easier for us. The world has got smaller. And we couldn't take a phone and do a story from Afghanistan as you could today. It was really much dependent on getting a satellite if you want to get stuff out. Much slower, really no competition. Mike Willesee had a program on Channel 7, but it was and there was Four Corners, but they weren't in our league in terms of what Kerry would let us do in terms of money. We could get helicopters if we had to. We could go to anywhere in the world, whereas Four Corners had to be a little more concerned about its budget. But this was the sort of golden age of television again.
What was Kerry like?
Kerry was amazing. Kerry was the most. I got to know him very well over the years. He was a one-off, totally a one-off. A bully. He'd been a bully financially and physically. He'd been almost.
Is it true he didn't drink?
I didn't drink at all.
Just I love the cheeseburger. I love the quarter pounder.
Yep. No, he'd been in a car accident when he was about 18 or 19, and I think a woman had been badly damaged in the car accident, and he gave Sir Frank his word that he'd never drink again. Okay. So he'd buy really good booze for you, and was quite happy about you drinking, but he never drank. Just ate, and Coca-Cola.
Wow. Because you see some of the things through the World Series of cricket, and you kind of see things secondhand, and he seemed like the bloke who I think every Australian would love to have met. Yeah, no, he was an amazing fellow. I mean, I had a number of private lunches with him and dinners with him around the place over the years. But he loved sport with a passion and was very good. I mean, he was off about 7 in golf. Wow. He was a very good tennis player, was not a bad batsman at all, and of course was a very good polo player. But we'd get together. He put about, when Alan Jones was involved with South Sydney, Kerry put about $650,000 in trying to prop Souths up before we got kicked out.
in those days. So he liked Souths, he liked tradition, he liked boxing.
Yeah.
He was heavily into boxing, and I had gone to the boxing a lot with my dad when I was a kid, and so at Sydney Stadium. So we talked and argued a lot. He was a Sagittarian, so like me, loved to argue.
I'm a Sagittarian as well.
Me too.
What's your birthday?
20 December.
Oh, I'm 7th of December.
Well, my wife's the 7th. She's exactly the same. But I knew I liked you. I like Sagittarius.
We're one off, mate.
But Kerry would love an argument.
What's his birthday? Do you know his birthday?
He was the 17th.
Okay, what's my brother-in-law's 17th?
Yeah, 17th. So, but he was. I remember at one stage, he called me up when he came back after he sold Channel 9 to Alan Bond for $1 billion and got it back for about 200 million. And he said, "Just only one Alan Bond comes along in your life." And he came back, and I was doing Midday at that stage. A great story. So I was doing Midday, and I'd been doing that for about 6 years. And he said, called him up, and he said, "You come on up." And he was like a big beached whale at that stage. He hadn't lost his weight. He had this white shirt on. He's stretched out his lounge, and he had a heart attack sometime beforehand. You see, so. He said, anyway, we talked sport and argued, and he then said, "You're not here for that. What do you want?" I said, "I don't want anything." I said, "I just want to know what my future is now that you're back." And he said, "I won't use the language, but it's your effing future. Your effing future. Why would I give an F about your effing future? I don't know what my effing future is." And so then he told me he'd been dead for about 8 minutes when he had a heart attack. Oh. And so it was the funniest thing when he said, "Why would I care about your effing future?" So I said, "Anyway, I've taken your time." And he said, "No, it's all right." So he put this big bare arm around the shoulders and said, "You'll be right, son. We'll look after you. You'll be right." And shortly afterwards, I got a current affair, and we were right. But he was this lovely thing. And why would I give a about
we'll get to your show, which was compulsive viewing later, the Today show, the Midday show.
You came to Midday. It's first met you.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I love that show. And obviously Mike Walsh before that. And, your second photo is intriguing because looks like obviously it's the Twin Towers, but it looks like an older photo. Tell us why this makes you real.
Yeah, it's about 1973, and Ken Duncan, whom we may mention later, probably the best landscape photographer in Australia, and I travel a lot with him because I'm an obsessive photographer. He says, "Don't throw photographs away, you should keep them there." This is a pretty ordinary 4 out of 10 photograph. It doesn't mean much apart from the story. So I was in New York, as I mentioned, the ABC correspondent, and Gough Whitlam had just taken over in Australia, so the Labor Party and the unions and so on are big stories in Australia. And this was a four-corner story I did on something called Local 3, which is the Electrical Workers Union in New York. They're the most powerful union in the country, and they could close the city down if they turned the lights out, etc. And they had the job of these two twin towers, 1973 it was, and so they'd finished the towers as the biggest buildings in the world, and they ran the city, and they had things like a 30-hour week. When we had we led the world in 40-hour weeks for workers. They had 30 hours. They had free health, free dental, all kinds of things. A very powerful union. So I'm sitting one Friday night on the top of a Friday afternoon. We'd finished the story on the top of that southern building, the one on the left, and we're just talking about landscape, and you could see the world forever up there. So we finished the interview, and I came down, and what you've got to do on television, of course, is just for Australia show Wall Street and what was on the ground. On the ground was that church, and it's St Paul's Church. It's an Anglican church. It was the most famous and the oldest church in America. They've got chapels and prayer halls, but no churches. And this is the one where George Washington had his pew, and first 15 years of American government was in New York, not in Washington. And this is where George Washington sat and so on. And so that was there. I took that with the two buildings. And of course, when the buildings came down, everything around it was knocked over, and those two buildings fell, and even the gravestones in that church were knocked over, but the building wasn't even touched. Whoa. In fact, the fireys and the rescue ambos and so on used George Washington's pew for sleeping and so on and so on. But it was absolutely untouched. And the rector there at the time said, as he took us round, said that this is amazing. He said, how come this thing stood when everything else was knocked over? Even you can see a little bit of a tree behind the church there. Even the tree was knocked over, but the church was untouched, which is an amazing story in itself because surrounding it, everything went. But the tag to the story is that St Paul's Cathedral in London, named this one was named after St Paul's in London. St Paul's Cathedral, of course, historically was all the bombing of the Nazi bombing around London, destroyed everything around St Paul's, but not a brick of St Paul's was affected. And you tend to think, hang on,
divine intervention.
Yeah, that's two St Paul's. Well, I mean,
that's the reason why. Even whatever your faith is, you've got to go, wow,
you got him.
What the...
No, you have to, absolutely. And it's, as I tell the story quite often, and believers say there, I told you so, and others say, coincidental, but it's not coincidental.
And where were you in 2001 when this happened?
I was working, I'd left 60 Minutes, I was back working independently at 9, but I went back shortly after. We did that, especially the year after, the commemorative thing. And you're reminded of, the days that I lived in New York. We walked around there and, as I say, we saw the World Trade Center go up, and it was the most powerful sort of symbol of American capitalism, if you liked, and suddenly it was knocked over. But it was just one of, and again, that reminder, I had a similar one I was going to bring it to you, was I was in New York when I first went there in 1969 when man walked on the moon, and I took and our building, the ABC building at that stage for radio, was in the Rockefeller Center, in the centre of anyone who knows New York, the old Rockefeller Center, and our building had been built in the Art Deco period, so you could open the windows despite air conditioning. You could open, and we're on the 27th floor. And that particular night when man walked on the moon, the photo I took, I was going to bring, which again is an ordinary photo except for the story. And there's about 1,000 people on 6th Avenue below us getting ready, waiting for man to walk on the moon. And they had the biggest TV in the world then, which was a Time Life magazine television set just up there. And people came to see what happened at 1:30 in the morning when Armstrong and Aldrin, Buzz Aldrin and Armstrong walked on the moon. And so I took this photograph from 27 floors up of all these people. At 1:20 when it happened, the photograph I took was a bit of a dodgy photograph because there was no light. But you look down below and there were about 10,000 people who'd blocked 6th Avenue, and you saw yellow cabs with the doors open. The cabbies had got out and everyone was looking at this biggest TV screen, not believing that as they walked out of the capsule and walked on the moon, whether they're going to disappear in the dust or what was happening. And New York, which is, everybody knows who's gone there, is this cacophony, this incredible noise in New York, went silent. It went silent there. There's just nothing, no noise at all, as people looked up to see what happened when man walked on the moon. And then probably 15 minutes later, went back, the buzz went on and cab doors closed and away it went. But it's a reminder that you've got to be careful what photos you throw away.
Well, that's
sometimes they're important.
I mean, there's always conspiracy theories about the man on the moon and this as well. But I mean, it was what you've seen over your period of nearly 60 years in the media. I mean, you've got a story on everything. That's
extraordinary. And the luck of the game that you had it playing football and no one can match it. You can't watch football and yet know what you went through. You can only imagine. And the same is on this. A number of times as a journalist I've been places talking to people or in places like the tsunami up in Indonesia 20 years ago. And I thought, there's 200,000 people killed in that. And you think, wow, this is a great privilege, apart from, a shocking story to cover, but a great privilege to be there is everything we do in life.
Can I ask you what type of camera you use for all your photos?
Oh, I've changed. I've got a Leica now. A good friend bought me a Leica, and my wife would never let me buy a Leica because they're too expensive and I've got too many cameras. But I did some work for a mate, and for my 75th birthday, he bought me a Leica, and I don't have it with me, oddly enough, today, but I carry it everywhere. It's like the man from American Express. I never leave home without the Leica.
Carl Malden.
On planes I do the same thing, but I've got two bits of gaffer tape, black gaffer tape, and I cover over the pink spot and over the name because I don't want to seem like a wanker as I'm carrying my Leica on, but I just love the camera. I love it.
So it's kind of the Penfolds Grange of cameras.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
Your third photo, when you sent this to me last week, I'm thinking, is this like an abstract photo or a painting? Then you've explained it to me. Please explain to our listeners exactly what this photo is.
Yeah, it didn't have a name. I called it Running Man Rock. And if you look closely at the photo, up on the left-hand side, sort of 3/4 way up, you'll see a head and a belly and two arms and two legs out there.
Yep.
And the head and the belly and the arms, once you've seen it, near the 2 figure 8s.
Yep.
And once you've seen it, you can't miss it. And the photo I took from a Qantas flight going up to Darwin about 10 years ago, a little over, and it was 40,000 feet. So that's through the double glass window of a perspex of a plane. A very good camera, and but that's 30. So that's about 11 k's up in the air. And I went up to Darwin about 10 times that year for an SBS series I was doing. And every time I sat in the same seat, which was sort of 1, 2 or 3 or 4 rows on the front, on the right-hand side. And at that particular spot, every Qantas or Virgin or Asian plane turns left at a place called Boulia in Queensland, just on the Northern Territory border. And if I got myself right, and I even worked out with the captain, I had the coordinates.
You're talking to the captain. That's bloody Ray Martin, mate. Turn where you want it to.
No, I'd get through you, the steward, and say, if you get a chance, and by that stage they're on automatic almost, and so no one had ever seen it, and they'd take photos of it themselves. And I saw it maybe a dozen times, took it in various conditions when the floods had come into that part of Queensland and heading down to Lake Eyre. It's the most amazing bit of country, and it's Burke and Wills country. It's where Burke and Wills went through there as well. So about 4 years ago, I was telling a mate up in Toowoomba about this particular flight and this particular thing. I'd never seen it from the ground. And he said, well, let's go up there. And he had a helicopter. And I went up there with Ken Duncan and we took a crew up. We did a 90-minute documentary for SBS called Run. And I called it Running Man Rock. It had no name. And the local farmers who muster with helicopters and planes had never seen it.
Is that stuck now, that name?
It has stuck there. So it's officially that. It's on the tourist track now. It's called Running Man Rock. But it's 500 million years old. And, and we took a geologist up there as well, and it used to be dinosaur country, and there are relics there of the undersea, or the ocean that used to be out there, and so lots of marine fossils and things like that out there. But it's just exquisite country, and it turned out to be, of course, when you check it out, all of Australia has Aboriginal connection, and up there is in the middle, about the belly, is a secret women's birthing area for the Aboriginal people up there, and the people I spoke to talked about it, but hadn't been there. It's probably about 1,500 foot high where the rocks are. The cattle around there don't go there, but it's quite ethereal. It's very hard not to. We got out and walked around and took photos of it and lit a fire in one corner of it one night. And it was really quite beautiful. But it's just that reminder that, I said to you earlier that I've been to about 100 countries, but I think the most beautiful place in the world is Outback, Australia. I just love the Outback.
So is that the actual photo there we're seeing? Is that the colours of it? Or did that?
Yes, it is.
That's the colours?
That's the colours. And that, again, you get high and the blues come out in any landscape. And so the blues around there, which are sort of, you can see all the shapes. But the figure itself is probably 2.5 kilometres long. And all those rest of those contours around there have been done by water and by wind in this ancient land. Of
How old is it?
About 500 million years.
500 million. That makes me feel very insignificant.
Well, all of us. But you pick up a rock from around there as you can in Australia, and you suddenly realise that you buy a clock that's 100 years old and you think it's important. The rocks out there are 500 million years old.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
It's the second oldest place in Australia, they tell us.
Really?
What's
the oldest?
The Pilbara. In Western Australia,
okay.
They tell us the oldest. But it's just, you drive around there and some people say, when is this over? When do I get to Alice Springs or whatever it was? But if you open your eyes, it is
all
the most
there.
Amazing country. And the sunsets and sunrises are to die for. So it's a great place. I love it.
You should be that bloke. Daryl Summers used to do it.
You
never know if you never go.
I know. I told the NT people, look, I would have done it for nothing. I genuinely love the place. I've been up there probably 50 times now to Northern Territory. And if I was a young bloke starting out, I think I'd go up there, especially a tradie.
Really?
I'd go up there and start.
Good advice.
It's just a fantastic place.
Next photo. Well, this one, it's obviously, we know it's Cathy Freeman, but we've never seen Cathy Freeman in pajamas before. Why Cathy, Ray? You've met so many athletes, so many sporting stars. Why Cathy Freeman?
Oh, she's the best. I'm a sports nut. I really should have been a sport cadet rather than a news cadet. And I've covered and played, and not to your level, but all kinds of sports. And the memorable times in my life, I was in New York for the Ali Frazier fight, the first one that Frazier won. And I used to go to Sydney Stadium, as I said, with my old man when I was a kid. So I was used to the fights, and I went and saw this particular one. ABC taxpayers paid for me to go to see the fight. And it was I thought, the most extraordinary event of my life to see Ali and Frazier at that stage in 20,000 people. Frank Sinatra was down the front about 10 rows from where I was. I was at about row 20, and Frank Sinatra was down the front. He could only get there as a photographer for Life magazine. He could only get a seat at the last moment. So, there was Frank Sinatra. From 20 rows out, it looked like every punch was like, someone with a baseball bat smashing a leather lounge.
I can only imagine.
It was extraordinary, and I thought that was the most. And then all the rest of the, I went to the weigh-in in the afternoon, and Ali turned up with about entourage of about 20 blokes walking across the basketball court. The New York Knicks were playing a final there, and Ali walked across. Remember, we filmed him at the time, and he walked across the basketball court, and they said, "Hey champ, hit a basket. And he stopped at the halfway mark, fair dinkum, this is a true story, halfway mark, bounced the ball a couple of times, went up, went bang.
No.
Didn't even hit the sides. It just went swoosh straight in. And they said, yeah, that's it. I'm sure if he did it 10 times, he couldn't have done it, but he did this thing. Then he walked in for the weigh-in and he took his dressing gown off and he was built like a rower.
Oh, like an Adonis.
Extraordinary shape. And he'd all oiled it up. And so when he took the dressing gown off, the room went, oh, and he said, yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And that sort of line. So it was all that build up to then we suddenly get the fight, and the fight was primal and blood and both had ended up with broken jaws in that one. I thought it was the biggest thing I'd ever seen until Cathy.
2000.
2000, when she won the 400, having opened the games basically, but the pressure on a young Indigenous woman at that stage
because the French girl was the favourite,
absolutely,
and in the end, the French girl couldn't handle the heat.
She just blew away, and it was just I thought it was amazing. So this is before she won that event, and I went up to Palm Island, which was an Aboriginal sort of gulag. They used to put Aboriginal people out there who caused trouble in Queensland. They'd send them out to Palm Island. And it was a horrible place. Her mum was sent out there. And her mum, bless her soul, at 15 was kicked off the island because she was too much a rebel. Wow. So I'm sure that she produced Cathy. And so I went back with Cathy and Angry Anderson. We went back there.
That's a trio.
They're fantastic. So we went back there and did a film. And there's a little motel on Palm Island, which I say is off Townsville. And so Cathy was there with her manager, who was a woman, and there was only one bedroom. I had one bedroom with my cameraman, and there was a double bed and a single bed on rollers, and you had to flip a coin to see who got the double bed. I got the single. She got the double in her room. And so I went in there and I said, I want to take a photograph. She signed that photograph of Palm Island, but she was there in the old PJs, looking as she is. I mean, the world's most natural woman, and she again no airs and graces. Little did we know that she was about to become the Olympic champion. And
so this was before 2000. What year was this?
This is just probably 6 months before.
Wowee.
Yeah, so we went up there too. She was training and she was with her mum and so on. But again, it was just as I say, I've covered every sporting event in known to man, but this was, I thought, her event was just the best I've ever seen.
It's hard to think of something in my lifetime that was more important. I mean, the 2000 Olympics, when they were announced, I think in '93 by Summeranch, that we're going to get them in 7 years' time. That's so far away.
Yep.
But all of a sudden they were on our doorstep, and I was
in Monte Carlo the night that Channel 9 and Channel 7 had the combined coverage. And
I was at the Pioneer Tavern having a beer.
I ran down. I had to do the interview with Goff and with Samaranch when they announced that Sydney had it. But I mean, then, as you say, 7 years later, it happens, and it was a huge event. But Cathy was the star.
Well, especially when it was like we were rowing at the Regatta Centre in Penrith. We had the marathon from Homebush. Everything was there. It was amazing. And when Cathy Freeman won that 400 metres in that suit.
Yeah.
And the number one contender, Marie Perec, didn't even race. She backdoored it because the pressure this she was putting on her, and she just done it easy. And then I've met her maybe once to say hi to in a bit of function, but I've never had time with Cathy Freeman. Tell us a bit about the woman she is.
She's just, by nature, I mean, you can see the heart is a beautiful heart, and I'm not being romantic about this thing.
No.
She just is a special woman. But I think she showed as a young woman. I first saw her, I covered the 1990 Commonwealth Games in Auckland, and she was in the 4x10, 4x100 relay, and they won a gold
Was she about
medal.
15 then or so?
Yeah, that's right. And even then, she was this shy little girl from Queensland. But then she pushed on to Victoria for the Commonwealth Games where she won gold herself, and she had the Aboriginal flag and also the Australian flag, and that was balls. I mean, really, when you're a young woman to do that then, when it was, you knew that most of the Australian Olympic Federation people would have had their 90s and a knot over the as they did with Dawn Fraser beforehand. So it was really tough of her to do it, and then all the odds you knew she was going to get heaps from all the newspapers and from all the officials as she did, but she stuck in there and finished up with that gold. Now, again, if you and I were writing the script, you'd have Cathy winning, but you knew it wasn't going to happen. I mean, it doesn't. It's just too unreal.
It's amazing.
this little woman from Australia would do it, and yet she just did it.
And do you speak to her often, Ray?
I've spoken a few times to her. I've got a number, and I call her up on a couple of things. And I came across that photograph. It was tucked away, and I've got about 80,000 photos. And I came across that, and I said, I've got to send you the photos. She said, please do. And she said, I can't believe there I was in the old PJs.
No one see Cathy Freeman in pajamas at Ray Martin.
But have a look at the smile. She couldn't give a rat's. She couldn't give a rat's.
She wouldn't give a rat's. So that's kind of what I think was so endearing towards her, or is so endearing to us. She's just got for how good she is.
Yeah.
She just, there's no nose up in the air. There's no.
She said that her brother, who was, I think Robert was the older brother, slightly older, and he went to college. She went to Catholic college up in Toowoomba again, and she said the brother was, in terms of sport, was a better footballer, a rugby league player than she was a runner. She was doing some netball and other stuff at that stage, but apparently the brother was just exceptional, as you imagine, with those genes.
Them genes and long legs that he got.
Yeah, but apparently just got, as so often happens, he just got homesick and went back to Toowoomba, or went back to Mackay, I think. But she said, in terms of schoolboy rugby league players, that he was the best she'd ever heard about.
Has she ever been named Australian of the Year, Cathy Freeman?
Don't think so.
No.
Don't think so.
No.
Yvonne was, but...
Yeah, Yvonne was. And was Dawn ever?
Yeah, I think so. If not, she should have been 10 times.
Well, she's, just older than you by 10, 12 years, but... She would have been someone to cover.
Oh, she's
wow.
The best. So again, you'd have to put her with Cathy, wouldn't you? Overall, again, for the balls and for taking on the establishment and just being
taking them on and say, you know what, I want to be me.
Yeah, go root your boot.
Wish more sportsmen and women would follow that lead.
Yeah, she was always on the right side of decency. Decent things she'd be on the right side of.
Your last photo, we've got A and B here because we know your love. You got many loves in your life. You obviously your wife and your daughter and your grandson and your granddaughter, your dog. But South Sydney are right up there. Everyone who knows you straight away goes, "Oh, South Sydney."
I was born South Sydney. My old man grew up in Matraville, and I never lived there. But we went to the bush, and he used to wear a cut-off South jersey, and he'd get the scratchy ABC coverage of Saturday afternoon football if need be in those days. And then on the mail truck we'd get the Mirror and the Sun would come in on a Monday, and every week, and one run, and it was always the Mirror and the Sun with the football results. And so I've seen South win 10 premierships, a long time between drinks, the last few. But there was no question when South were kicked out of.
Tell us a little bit about the background of that, because you were right involved.
I was, yeah. Andrew Denton and I raised a lot of money for the legal fight. It was just one of those I couldn't believe. It just showed how stupid Rupert Murdoch was, and the Murdochs pressed to kick South at that stage. But I remember an interview that Murdoch did with Yarn Event on A Current Affair, and he talked about umpires instead of referees.
Wow.
And I thought, it just shows how little you know about this game. And to kick out St George or South Sydney as the two sort of classic clubs there, pride of the league with South, that sort of stuff, show that you didn't know it. And then when South's followers decided to take them on, unlike North's or unlike even St George, combining with the
never seen that march, anything like that march.
It was extraordinary, and we had. I didn't care much for Canterbury in the old days, but 11 busloads of fans walked with us down.
Wow.
So I've got to love Canterbury, and Newcastle were much the same. They sent busloads down the freeway to join us on the walk, so you've got to look after your mates. But it was just one of those, I thought, no way in the world could we beat Rupert Murdoch, the power of Murdoch. And yet we did. And we did, and it's just a mark of what it's about. I feel sorry for North Sydney. I feel sorry for
North's kind of back now. They've got the Bears, the Perth Bears back. There's some. They're back in some capacity.
Yep.
The Jets, I feel sorry for as well. They don't look like they're ever going to come back. The Newtown Jets, but they're very prominent in New South Wales Cup. They have been for a long time.
Like at Penrith and Parramatta to a great degree, but certainly Souths is when we won in 2014. I went back to the juniors and was there till God knows when. But you realised around the stadium that night for an hour, 2 hours after the victory, that all those South supporters, the old supporters who really had not a lot in life apart from their families and Souths, I think it was just the biggest night of their lives. And I think for Penrith to have won, it's again, you realise just how big it is. It's not just a game of football. It's about life.
It's about life, and it's about I remember after we won the 91 grand final, 6 months later, people would come back and not say, congratulations on the win. They just said, thanks for putting us on the map and relief.
Yeah.
You know, it was just
No, it does.
That's
it does.
relief.
And yet I think for Rupert not to understand that it was more than kicking a piece of football around. It was about life and about culture and about who you are and where you live.
Or the umpires.
And your neighbours. And the umpires.
So tell us about these photos. Is your dog on the left here still with us?
Yeah,
My grandson. Tell us all about your grandson.
Yeah, so the dog, his name's Jed, and he's a border collie.
Yeah,
and, he's
beautiful looking dog.
The world's best dog. He's just the sweetest dog. And it's my daughter's dog, and I spend a lot of time with him, and a lot of time, as you can see.
Yeah.
So she dresses him up for Oscar night. She dresses him up for Thanksgiving. She dresses him up for you name it. He cops all this. He cops. So I was out at Redfern doing something that day just before they knocked over the stand there at Redfern, and we wanted a photograph, and so we took this photograph. That's the one on the left, and he just copped it. And he looks like he's smiling, looks like he's very happy.
He does. He's posing for the photo.
The other one is the start of a season a couple of years ago, and it's my grandson Arlo, who's only about 2.
Where was it
at? Stage, at his house. And just at his backyard, and it's the start of a season. It's almost like, oh shit, here we go. Again. It's going to be one of those rotten seasons. Here I am. Do I have to do it? So he wears, both of them wear South Sydney gear all the time. But during the season, Arlo wears it, but at that stage they don't look very happy.
No,
it looks like an ordinary season.
I know this is a hard question because of someone who are you able to nominate your top 3 South Sydney players that you've seen play for them?
Oh, gee, I mean, I go back to Churchill, of course.
Yeah, well, we had Scotty Sattler on recently speaking about his dad.
Well, John, I was about to say, I mean, John would be probably my top.
Really? Top?
Yeah, I just thought, I mean, again, I saw him play, but the stories of Sats, I mean, the days when you could actually thump, when you were playing, if you could thump somebody and get away with it. And there's a wonderful story in Sats' autobiography in which Bernie Purcell was the coach and Sats is the captain. They're playing Manly somewhere, I think out at Manly. And in those days, the coach used to actually lock up the lockers and take them, and the guys, you'd leave all your gear in there. It was one of those, and he'd take the keys out. So he was on the sideline, and he's 2 minutes later after the whistle blows, they started, he's going out to sit alongside the game, and he sees Sats coming off, and he says, "What happened, Sats? You've forgotten something." He said, "No, I'm off. I've just been sent off. It's only 2 minutes into the game." And you looked like, you stood alongside John Sattler. He was smaller than me. And yet he took on Mac Trucks, and there's nothing worried him. So
big ticker,
and also a great player. But I think probably him. I mean, Sam Boots is hard to go back.
Well, it's amazing because you've had the eras that you've watched, the success with Churchills and the McCarthys and the Stevens and Coots and Sattlers, and then you have the Burgess and Inglis. Type era.
That drought in the middle.
But let's not talk about the drought.
The 34 years of drought.
I mean, sometimes you've got to be kicked down to get up.
Yeah, I think a bit like the game against Melbourne early this year that, we get beaten at a golden point. That's one of those that, again, I think it shows the spirit of Wayne Bennett, of them coming back. These days Souths don't normally get thrashed.
No.
They usually come back and do something, and that's when they're playing for Wayne that's a help. But also it's simply just that great pride. I mean, even the people like the Latrell Mitchells and the Cam Murrays and so on like that, they're still... Again, you've got to be one-eyed. Everyone can say that about their own side, but I just think there's something special about
Well,
Souths.
I thought there was something special. I still think there's something special in this year because if Cam Murray was in that team... Yeah. But sometimes you just miss that one little linchpin that you need.
And Campbell Graham's
he's on Origin's radar.
Yeah. I think as Wayne Bennett says, you've got to play with what you've got, so you can't whinge about it. But to have 7 players out of 13 in the hospital on the sidelines, that's bad. Anyway, you've got to play with what you've got.
Well, finally, mate, to finish off our little podcast here, we ask a few questions of you, Mr. Martin. First, I want to ask you, what's your favourite band and song?
I think probably here I show my, I go back to the 70s because I'm locked in the 70s.
I'm a 70s. I love 70s.
Locked in the 70s. But I think probably Bob Seger.
Bob Seger.
That band that was just I played it on when
still
I was coming here
the same or something? Or?
Yeah, well, it's still the same is great. Just a Bob Seger for me. I put it on coming here today and it makes me feel good. And I travel. It's a good travelling. He's a good travelling bloke. But Bob Dylan I love, and I love Van Morrison as well. So I tend to like singer-songwriters.
From the dark side of the road.
Yeah,
Van Morrison,
Van Morrison, I do.
There's a doco, or like the movies they do with Bob Dylan with that Chamblay, the young kid who's Have you seen that yet?
I have seen it.
The autobiography. Is it good?
No, it's very good. No, very good indeed. But I remember
Timothy Chambly, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well done. You're hip.
I've got 5 kids, mate, across all ages. I've got to know something.
No, well done. It was funny. You don't be careful what you wish for. When I first joined the ABC, there was a bloke there named Alan Hogan who went on to become the executive producer of the Sunday program when it first began. So an old mate from ABC days, and we both loved Bob Dylan. We used to compare, and we'd say, "What about an interview with Bob Dylan?" And he went to Townsville, I went to Perth, and he rang me from Townsville and said, "Guess what?" I said, "What?" And he said, "I've got an interview with Dylan." I thought, I won't use the language, but I said, "Oh, you go, fuck yourself." And on that, and he said, "Yeah, but be careful what you wish for." And that was a radio interview he did, and he said it was back in the we're talking
like
about late
'60s.
Late '60s. It was like pulling teeth. He said monosyllabic answers. He said it was hopeless, totally hopeless. So I think the same with Van Morrison. I hear that Van Morrison's a tough interview. So
who was the toughest you've had?
Toughest interview?
Like, is there someone you or was there someone you just couldn't wait to do, and once you interviewed him or her, you thought, "Oh man, I wish that was better"?
Yeah, thankfully not. I tend to erase those. But a politician, Malcolm Fraser was terrible in the days. It turned out to be quite a good bloke, and big man, but also arrogant. It seemed. I think he was just shy. But politicians generally were. I remember, with Bob Hawke, for example, we'd have on Midday. We actually, with Hawke, we had to turn off the television monitor because, as you know, when you come on Midday, there was one for you and one for me to look at. And Hawke would spend all his time just fixing his hair and running his eyes and looking at himself. And we turned it off because he wouldn't look at me or look at the camera. He just looking at himself.
I'm looking all right today.
You look pretty good, Bob. So it would be a politician of some time. Who was the other guy who was the guy in Batman? The Texan,
West. Was it West?
The Texan, come on, guys, help me.
Oh, what? The
American actor who was...
Michael Keaton?
No, we're getting there.
Ben Affleck?
I'll think of it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so just a recent Batman?
No, about the middle. They were about the middle.
Okay.
The second, the third last. Anyway, but I'll think of it in a moment. But I interviewed everybody else on that particular one, and they were all terrific. And this bloke was just, I think they told me in advance that, talk about he just had a son. He had 2 daughters and just had a son. And so you talk about his son, he'll talk about that. And he was just hopeless. He was just Michael Johnson, the other one I was thinking of. Michael Johnson, the great 400-metre athlete.
Yes, he had a bit of a lift. No, not the lift. No, it was, I'm speaking about the bloke who got on the drugs.
No.
Ben Johnson.
Well, no, Michael Johnson. So on this one. So one of the greatest, the greatest 400 metres of all time, was a pain in the ass.
Was he?
Absolute pain in the ass. He was arrogant, didn't want to talk, didn't want to be there. He said to me before we started, so it's just after he won Olympics in Sydney. He won the 400 and the 400, 4x400. And all the stories about drugs and the Americans in the Sydney Olympics, of course. And so they said to me in advance, I did a 60 Minutes thing about it, and a day in the life of Michael Johnson. And he was up in Brisbane for this, and they said, "Don't talk about drugs." And I said, "Well, I'm going to talk about drugs.
You're going to poke the bear, baby.
Absolutely going to talk about drugs." "No, don't do it." So we did. And early on, I didn't talk about it, but
when you do that, do you know you're going to do it? But do you get them in a little bit, like get them feel comfortable, then you think, okay,
well, they said
now's the time.
They said he'd walk off, and he did. And so I didn't want to do it first question. I wanted to get something the rest of the day. But I'm at the start of our shoot in the morning, and there were some hard hats came down from a building nearby on the river where we went down to film him with Brisbane as a backdrop. He was there for the Brisbane Games and the Goodwill Games that followed, and they'd paid him $100,000 or something to come along on it, so that's the reason he agreed to do it. And anyway, so I said to him, I realised he didn't want to be there, and the hard hats tried to get photographed. No photographs, no photographs. And so I say to him, just to calm him down, I say, look, I know this is a pain in the bum for you, but we'll be as painless as we can. And I said, I just want to talk about you. I want to talk Cathy Freeman. I want to talk about the Sydney Olympics. And he said, I don't give a fuck about the Sydney Olympics. I don't give a fuck about Cathy Freeman. And I'm sick of talking to myself. And I thought, this is going to be a great day. This is going to be a great interview. And it didn't get any better. So at the end, when I asked him, we sat down for the main interview and asked him about drugs, and he said, I'm not talking about drugs. And I said, well, hang on, it's the main. There were 5 Americans sent home because of drugs. I'm not talking about drugs. Well, then why don't you want to talk about drugs? He got up, and I thought he was going to hit me. He just hovered over me, and he sort of put a hand back.
Oh, wow.
And he was as tall as you and big, and I thought, and we had 3 cameras. And I said, please hit me, but don't hit me hard.
Yeah.
Please hit me, just
This
don't
would be
hit me
great
hard.
TV.
He didn't. He got up and said, well, when I come back for the games, there's one person I'm not going to talk to, and that's you.
Wow.
And I said, tell someone who cares.
Well, he's missing out on a lot because you're our best. Well, your publicist said the same to me about this next question. What's your favourite TV show? No. Obviously, you had yours. Your Ray Martin show was that's how we met. You were just so natural at it. You were just so natural.
It was great fun, wasn't it?
You were just, coming from where you'd come from 60 Minutes, and you just, you were kind of following something like Mike Walsh
Yeah,
too.
he was great. He set it up, was his program.
But then you just didn't miss
Well,
didn't miss a gear.
Jeff Harvey and the band were terrific. I'd never worked with a band before. I didn't realise that, they're the best in the world. They were just marvellous musicians, and they were funny. And Harvey was very funny, and became a great mate. And overall, it was just you realise I'd never done that 90 minutes live television today. Unlike radio, there's no 7-second delay.
No.
So if someone used the magic word as they did,
Many
or
occasions.
something happens, someone falls over as they did, you got to live with it. And so that's really great. I mean, I couldn't believe how good it was.
Oh.
And we could have
How long did you do it for?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years, and I loved it. It was just, it was a great experience. But also we had Sting, we had Meatloaf, we had John Denver, we had Tony Bennett.
You name it.
Everyone who came through town.
Why don't we have them anymore? Why don't we have them type of shows?
I think probably social media's changed, so you can get all that on your phone nowadays. You could only get it on Mike Walsh show and Hey in those days. But now you can get anywhere. And lots of those interviews are on, even on YouTube.
So what is your favourite TV show these days? Have you got a favourite TV series that you're watching at the moment? Are you binging something?
No, I don't. I mean, occasionally I do one of those, but I really only watch news and sport on television. That's about all I watch.
Like my dad.
I watch all the rugby league
And
games.
watch every channel of their news, or just one channel, or
I usually I watch ABC and SBS for news. When the American elections were on, it was on 24 hours a day on CNN. When I left home today, my wife was watching Minjee Lee having won a big one in America, and so the golf was on. It's almost like a flickering fire place with some sort of sport on it in our home. So I tend to watch those. I watch Four Corners. I watch.
You're not a streamer. You don't stream TV
really.
shows.
Every now and then I do, but not really. No, I usually find
Yellowstone?
I read a book. No.
Kevin Costner. You're a bit of Kevin.
I love Kevin.
You got a bit of Kevin Costner, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I love him. I've done interviews with him a couple of times. No, I love him. He's. I just find I read about a book a week, and I read lots of magazines. I read online magazines.
Wow.
And I tend to like to read, and I sort of think I'll waste my time watching cricket.
Yeah.
All the time, and I watch all the rugby.
Yeah,
league,
same.
And I watch Aussie Rules, and I watch my wife watches golf.
What's your favourite film?
Favourite film, I think, is Godfather 2.
Very, very, very good movie.
I just, every time, I've watched it maybe 20 times all up, and since it came out, and
Pacino.
I can't believe how beautiful the pictures are. I can't believe how much
Sicily.
mood is there, and what it says about, there's one of the best books I ever read was The Godfather, and I think in that one it just sort of summed up a lifestyle in America and Italy and so on. So I loved it.
We probably know that rugby league's your favourite sport. What's your other favourite sport? Cricket. Okay, what about outside of rugby league and cricket? Is there something is kind of your guilty pleasure that it's not mainstream that you like?
Oh, probably golf.
Golf.
I could never understand. I was really keen sportsman. And
Are you off? What are you off? Do you play?
No, I almost stopped now. I got down to 14, but I couldn't crack 14. And I played A-grade squash for a few years where I met my wife, and she was a better player than me. She was playing New South Wales grade.
Squash gets you fit.
Yeah, so I played that and so on. I played a lot of tennis. I won school tennis championships, but I couldn't bloody hit that golf ball. I couldn't get below 14. I used to watch, fat old bastards get out there and drive and straight down the middle and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Here I was reasonably fit, but golf I love.
We mentioned that you've got Cathy Freeman in your phone contacts, but who would be your most famous name, do you think, in your phone contacts?
Oh, probably Don Bradman. I still have Don.
You've still got him?
Still got him. I won't lose it.
Oh, that's...
I won't. He was, the 10,000 interviews I did, he was the best, I think. He and Fred Hollows, the eye doctor, and David Attenborough are the three, my holy trinity. But
they're your podium.
Yeah, but Don had never done a television interview before, and I emceed a fundraiser he had here in Sydney for the Barrel Don Bradman Museum, and the last time he came east, And we were sitting at a table, my wife and I, with him and his wife afterwards, just having a coffee when he'd had his speech and I'd done the emceeing. And he said, gee, he said, my wife and I, he said, Jesse and I watched the Midday show, and we laugh at that fella Jeff Harvey there. We just laugh at him. And I said, well, will you come on the show next time we come to Adelaide? We never went to Adelaide. We would have gone for him. And he said, oh, good try, son, good try, son. He said, I don't do any interviews these days. I got over that. But he said, if I ever do a television interview, I'll do it with you. Now, I thought it was just, the sort of thing that people say over a cup of coffee. And, it came sometime later, and I got a call from Bob Hawke.
Wow.
And Bob Hawke said, I've just been to dinner with, after he left being Prime Minister, I've been to dinner with Don Bradman. He's agreed to do an interview on Wide World of Sport, but he won't do it unless you give approval. And I said, what? He said he once gave you his word that he would do it. And I said, well, yeah, you've got approval, but I'm back in the game. And anyway,
you interviewed?
So I interviewed him.
For Wide World of Sports?
No, for a 2-hour special on Channel 9.
Oh, wow.
And, but it was just, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I just couldn't believe that I spent 3 days with Bradman in Adelaide, and he said, I'll talk about anything you like. He said, my wife, Jessie, who had cancer, she won't talk, and I can't talk about the kids because his son had changed his name. He was a lawyer.
So famous.
And
too famous.
Couldn't live in Adelaide with the name Bradman.
Wow.
He then changed it back later. He changed it to Bradson. And the daughter was intellectually disabled, and so he didn't want her on. The wife ended up talking to me, and so there was this great love story interview. He talked about falling in love with Jessie when he was 14 and she was 12. Down in Barrel, she came to stay with him in Barrel, and he chased her around the world till she agreed to marry him. So this, high-pitched little Aussie man with massive hands, massive hands, the hands of a woodcutter.
Really?
And and little feet. I mean, so tiny feet. I think size 6 feet. These massive hands. Anyway, we did this interview for 3 days and on and off, and it was I couldn't believe how I felt like I'd, as I say, died and gone to heaven. I couldn't believe it.
As I have now with you.
I wish.
My friend, I could sit here for 3 and 4 hours chatting to you about your life.
Thanks, brother.
You've had one of the best and most colourful and most respected careers in our media, and every time your name gets mentioned, someone follows it with a smile. You're universally loved, and the fact that you've chosen time to come and spend some time with me today on Life in 5, it means a lot to me.
That's a great honour. Thank you.
Ray Martin, this is your Life in 5.
Thank you.
And this, did you ever host This Is Your Life?
I didn't. No. I appeared a few times. Never hosted.
And on behalf of Lily Pilly Wines, there's a little Sauv Blanc and a Shiraz.
Lovely. Perfect. I'll drink it with a smile on my face.
Go on you, Raymond.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.